Who saw the whole entirety of the film with us here? How many people? Okay, so we're pretty good then. That's great. We can talk all about it without worrying about spoilers. As you know, he was really interested in psychological themes. Remember we looked at even the number plate on the car? Do you remember what it was? Yeah, the ANL is no accident, right? It's connecting with what Freud was talking about with personality types, being an anal retentive person, like Norman is in that story. And of course the whole split personality thing, the Oedipus complex that he suffers, a strong attachment to to his mother, right? That's called Oedipus complex, which Sigmund Freud came up with. So we know from the story the fascination within the story itself that Hitchcock is quite taken by these ideas. And he uses things like Freudian slips to communicate what Norman is thinking about. You know, he says of Marion, oh, you eat like a bird. You know, and he talks about trapping things, and he talks about stuffing things, saying, oh, I think only birds look well stuffed. You know, beasts, nah, not so much. So he's talking about the fact that he likes the look of the birds because they're passive. So he's really talking about his attitude to women. And Hitchcock was big on this sort of subliminal Freudian slip through all that conversation. Remember he says about the mother up in the house, oh, but I couldn't leave her. It'd be cold and dark up there, cold and damp, like a grave. Her fire would go out. She needs me. Remember? And he says, it's not like she's mad. It's not like she's a lunatic, a raving thing. We all go a little mad sometimes. You know, all these clues all the way through. Freudian slips revealing what Norman is really thinking. So let's see two examples where he doesn't just write in the dialogue, and remember it's not actually his book, it's not his story, but it's his film. He then takes what he had in the story from Robert Bloch and he delivers it in a way which makes use of some subliminal techniques. So the first one is a visual one. Just go to about there to hear the last confession of the mother being unhappy with the behaviour of her son.
Well, let them see what kind of a person I am. I'm not even going to swat that fly. I hope they are watching. They'll see, and they'll know, and they'll say, why, she wouldn't even harm a fly.
Now you notice how it ends there with the screen slicing up into the black. Yeah, that's the same way the initial credits were done at the beginning, almost like chopping through, and even the text itself. People's name in the opening credit sequence, their surname and their first name fly apart on screen, different directions, reminding us of the split personality thing, you know. So he's very cleverly woven these messages through. And the fact that he finishes with this as the last shot is possible because he's already done all the credits to the cast and crew at the beginning of the movie so that we're left sitting in the darkness at the end. There's nothing more to say, just the scary finish. And of course this is from 1960 it was released, remember? And if you just think back to what people were used to watching in 1960, think of an action film from 1960 compared to now. How fast it's edited now compared to what they would have had. Think of music video clips, what we have now, compared to they had one person with a guitar with a wide shot for the whole song, you know. They weren't used to this rapid fire images coming up. And so they probably would have had a lot more trouble picking up on a couple of frames like that than we do. So my argument is that that was even more subliminal to the audience of 1960 than it is today. But you can see that this is, you know, the last dissolve before the car comes out, this is how he wanted to leave the audience feeling. Why didn't he just show a picture of the mother? Why didn't he just show the preserved skull? He's already shown it earlier on in the movie. Yeah, showing the mother taking over him physically. So it reinforces that message, but it also leaves us with just that creepy ghostly suggestion of that as the last thing we see before the cinema goes black. Don't forget what he did. He had life-size standees, cardboard cutouts of himself, in cinema foyers with him pointing to his watch like this, with a caption saying, "Nobody but nobody will be admitted after the start of the movie." So they actually locked the doors and stopped people coming in. Right? Psycho did for shower screens what Jaws did for the beach, for swimming at the beach. And part of it is because of this sort of stuff. Now, Hitchcock didn't just use visuals.
Mrs. Bates.
What did you hear going on there? It's interesting how the scream doesn't line up with what's going on with people's faces. Hitchcock didn't write this. Remember, it was written by a guy called Robert Bloch, who was a journalist who happened to live close to where this mass murder happened. And do you remember what other two films were based on that same character who committed the crimes? Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Silence of the Lambs, right, yeah. And because Hitchcock was worried about people knowing the ending, because it would ruin the movie, he made sure that they didn't have it. So it's the book. You couldn't get the book in 1960, right? But I have here a Reader's Digest version of a couple of short stories in that thriller vein, and one of them is Psycho. Okay, so you recognise that as the scene that we've just been watching? Okay, now I'm just going to play that bit of the scream again to see if you can figure out what you're listening to. Here we go. Something else going on there? But the voice wasn't coming from those sunken leathery jaws. It came from behind her, from the top of the cellar stairs where the figure stood. She stared at the garishly reddened lips, watched them part in a convulsive grimace. "I am Norma Bates," said the high, shrill voice. What? Really? There it is in black and white, folks. It was written in the book. So how did Hitchcock interpret that? He decided that instead of actually seeing that being said, that we would hear it almost as if from the mother inside Norman. So let's just hear it again now that you know what he says. Now, isn't that surprising how I played it for you twice, but you still didn't really get it until I told you what it was and then played it. That allows your brain to pick it out from the background noise of being involved with watching the vision and hearing the other sound effects and things. Now, we know that that's been added in because it's not actually the voice of the person in front of the camera. It doesn't synchronize with the lip sync that we observe there, so we know it's dubbed on over the top, so we can prove it's a deliberate addition. And of course now we've seen the text from the original book. There is no denying that that's what he said, and yet when we see it, it works subliminally. You know, you weren't consciously aware of it, and yet somehow it reveals the mystery of the film to us at the moment of revelation. This is the jigsaw. Norman is the mother. Oh, okay, it makes sense. Maybe the reason it feels like it makes so much sense to us, despite being a ridiculous concept, is the fact that subliminally he's telling us. You know, he's kind of wanting us to agree, oh yeah, I get it now. even though he's deliberately deceived us earlier in the film with voiceovers and stuff like that. What I hope I've proven to you from showing you that is that Hitchcock was very definitely not just interested in the ideas of how the mind works within the story itself, but he was also playing with how the mind works in the way he edited the film together and the way he leads us to draw false conclusions and to implant ideas within us.